Welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces. We are tackling a huge tomato project in the pickup kitchen today. We bought a half a bushel of fresh tomatoes from a local farm. It's one of our favorite produce stands and it's right near our house. And we are going to turn these into crushed tomatoes. Crushed tomatoes are one of the most versatile things that you can have in your pantry. If you've got crushed tomatoes ready to go, you can make pasta sauce, soup, chilies, lots of other soups. They really come in very handy. So we tend to prepare a ton of crushed tomatoes, get them in the pantry or the freezer, and then that way we have them for all of our winter projects. So you'll see I am taking the core out of each tomato, slicing them into segments, and putting them in a roaster pan. This is a 20-quart roaster pan. I will do my best to find one just like mine and link it in the description for you. But we are taking a half bushel of tomatoes, slicing them up, putting them in the roaster pan, and cooking them down. Lots of tomato recipes do tell you that you need to peel your tomatoes. You score them with an X on the bottom, you take the core out, you put them in boiling water for a couple seconds, you pull them out, and then you peel off all the skin. I never do that. I prepare my tomatoes this way every single time, and I've never had any complaints from my family about it. If you like to peel your tomatoes, by all means, go ahead and do that. But I can tell you that if you're using large tomatoes like I'm using here, you do not need to peel them. Your crushed tomatoes will come out just fine. This particular half bushel of tomatoes, they were perfect. There were very few blemishes. There were very few bad spots. Pretty much every ounce of tomato that we bought ended up in our crushed tomato project. You'll see very soon that this roaster pan ends up full to the top. Don't worry, tomatoes do cook down quite a bit. But we ended up with plenty of crushed tomatoes this year. It was a great project and really fun to share with you guys. So this is the last batch, the last couple of tomatoes that I'm just going to finish slicing. And then we're going to get these roasting. This project took about 2.5 days from start to finish. The tomatoes take quite a bit of time to cook down. I let them cook in this roaster pan overnight on a low setting. And it really just depends how thick you want your final product to be. The thicker you want it, the longer you have to cook it. Now with this full roaster pan of tomatoes, I ended up adding 8 cups of water. In the past, I have accidentally not added enough water, and some of the tomatoes on the bottom will end up getting burnt or scorched, and you don't want that in your sauce. So if you add a lot of water, of course, you're going to have to cook your tomatoes down longer, but in my book, it's a little bit better to cook them a little longer than to risk burning them. So here I'm just using my hand blender to blend up the tomatoes. They're not completely cooked down, but they are cooked enough. I believe at this point they had been cooking for probably about 8 hours. But as long as they're soft enough for you to puree, you can go in there with your handheld blender and do that. It's very difficult to take them out while they're hot and blend them in like a food processor or a blender. So I do really recommend investing in one of these little hand blenders. It made the project so easy. So now the next afternoon, this is what our crushed tomatoes look like. There were a couple of chunks still left in there, but we don't mind that. And you could see that the roaster started off completely full, but it cooked down several inches. So this project is going to be pressure canned with my Presto pressure canner, and I'm just following the instructions for the pressure canner to do this. You can do 5 large quart jars at a time in the pressure canner. Now, tomatoes can be water bath canned. You can do either water bath canning or pressure canning for fresh tomatoes. If you water bath can, they have to boil for 35 minutes. If you pressure can, they only have to pressure can for 15. So I much prefer to pressure can my crushed tomatoes because the project goes a lot faster. The pressure canner also has a lovely feature where it prepares and sterilizes your jars for you. So here I was just following the instructions, which was to add a certain amount of hot water to the canner itself, fill each jar halfway with some hot water, and then you put the lid on, and there is basically a jar warming cycle that this pressure canner will do for you. It's great because then your jars are the perfect temperature to add your hot tomatoes to, and they're also clean and ready to go. Next, you're going to see me prepare the tomatoes for canning. Tomatoes have to have a little extra acid added to them to make them safe to can. I'm following the instructions that came with the Presto pressure canner, but each jar, if it's a quart-sized jar, gets 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I used store-bought here. You can certainly use fresh lemon juice if you have it, but each jar got 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then I filled each jar up with the crushed tomatoes. Filling the jars with my ladle, mixed the lemon juice with the tomatoes perfectly. I did not end up stirring them or shaking them in any way. They combined no problem. I sped up this process a little bit for you. That way you don't have to look at every single ladle of tomato product. You'll see at the end of this video just how many jars we ended up getting. It was a great project. We're so excited to have all of these tomatoes ready on the shelf for us. As with any canning project, you want to take a damp paper towel and wipe off the rims of your jars. And you want to use a brand new canning lid. I use 4Jars canning lids. I love them. I've been using them for a couple of years now. I order them online. They're very affordable, and I've never had a single jar fail on me. So once your rims are clean, put a brand new lid on your jar and then just tighten it fingertip tight like usual. You do want to let any kind of gases or extra air escape from your jar during the canning process. So that's why you don't want to over tighten your jars, and you don't want to under tighten them either, because you don't want the stuff in your jar to come out into your canner. So now I'm just putting my jars in the pressure canner. It was ready to go. And like I said, pressure canning tomatoes, it cuts 20 minutes out of the process, which is amazing, especially when you're doing a really big batch. So once all of my jars are in there, and those are it's 5 quart jars that fit in the pressure canner at one time, I'm just going to put the lid on. This pressure canner comes with excellent instructions, so you really cannot mess this up. You just follow the instructions and it works amazingly. And this is the weight that you put on top of the pressure canner when you're pressure canning. So that was the next step in the process. And then here our jars are done. They are ready to come out. And so I carefully opened the pressure canner when it told me it was ready. And then I pull my jars out. This first batch of crushed tomatoes processed while I was working on other projects. And once this batch comes out, I can load up the next batch. So this pressure canner is great. Using a traditional pressure canner is fine. It's just not something I ever grew up doing, and it's not something I'm super comfortable with. I much prefer the ease of this electronic pressure canner. I don't have to worry about how hot the water is or what elevation I'm at. I can just use this pressure canner and not worry and go on about the rest of the activities that I want to do while it's working for me. I want to thank you for joining us. We had a great time doing this project. Here's what they looked like when they came out. And we ended up with a lot of tomatoes for this year. Once again, thanks for joining us in the Pickup Kitchen. We appreciate you being here. Please join us next time. Thanks, bye.